This is a brief précis. But précis are seldom brief, are they, when spoken sometimes by the theologian, whose equivocation to their theory has to, in their mind, please the proletariat theologian and the doctorate bench. However, people do say to the average piano player, "Hi there." People do say to her, "What is the future of the grand piano?" To which the best answer to that might be, if you were asking Oliver Cromwell, what is the best future for your country, who would in 1657 would have said something quite differently to that which he might have said before the battles of the English Civil War in the 1640s. Because if you have hindsight, you can predict to some extent the future policies from what might take place either in the future or what has happened in the past. Whether you call that hindsight or prediction, I leave to you. But to those people who would ask me, what is the future of our piano? The best answer that really the average piano player, hi there, can give is feed the dinosaur. Feed the dinosaur. And people say, well, she's rather sensible, isn't it? Because if you don't feed the dinosaur, it's going to die. I was recently listening to some number of pianists play on the net, and what strikes me is the complete dedication to the individual pianist who composes their own composition. The merit in this, I would say, by the average public, is divided into many diverse scientific analyses, plural, which is from the, shall we say, the scientific question as to whether the people listening are in any sense what they might call tone deaf. But does anyone really understand these terms? For instance, you speak to somebody about, well, how many watts is your motorcycle producing, And they say, well, hold on a minute, I haven't got a stereo system fixed up at the moment, and I certainly haven't bought a pair of headphones. So we get all these wrong opinions, don't we? But want to praise those people who do play their own compositions, because they have the same emphasis to this truth, which is called invention, which James Watt, the people who invented electricity, Voltaire, the writers, the people that invented the novel, the people that invented, for instance, what's in my mind is the Count of Monte Cristo. People are not going to make a piano, are they, going to live forever if they're still writing the virginal suite for pianos with people mentioned in it by works by, for instance, Bird. And that even you'll notice in the years after the Inquisition or during it, however you interpret the trend towards the Church of England, since the Church of Rome had so much power. Britain was Roman, wasn't it, originally? That since William the Conqueror landed here, you've got to realise that Britain really is not English at all. It is not Irish at all. It is not Scottish at all. In fact, the first kings of England were French. So coming back to what your genuine piano player is achieving for the theories of evolution in the general run of things, is they are achieving this free voice, this power of invention, which is hitherto, to some extent, if you consider the constant performing of the traditional composers, such as there are many, from Brahms, Rachmaninoff, to backwards to people such as in the Virginal Suite, the Fitzwilliam Virginal Suite. You take the history of the keyboard was in fact not from even the piano, which was an invention in its grand form, which was earlier. A lot of people don't realize than the upright. They assume because the grand came as a more expensive instrument, they assume it was designed later. Not true. The upright came in about 1790 something, whereas the grand piano was very much the invention of the early Broadwoods, in the forms of harpsichords and the like, which had their basis in the contemporary monarchies, essentially, which could afford it through Italy, France, and Britain. But essentially more through Italy, where the invention in approximately 1700 of Bartolomeo Cristofori invented piano. The point is, if you are not a theologian, and you are not employed, for instance, as a politician, and you are not a professor of some college where it is expected that you will be speaking the language of your peers, then you have more chance to be understood as the layman by everyone, because the kind of intelligence, the kind of tone deafness which is lent to the proper understanding of what is tone deafness, or what is concert pitch, or what is perfect pitch, is more understood of the average, the go-ahead self-composer, the Elton Johns of this world. And the reason for that or the reasons I have stated, the effect of it will be considerably different to the outcome to, for instance, the constant performing of the first sonata of W. van Beethoven or W. Wagner or W. Wilhelm Kaiser of Germany. Didn't he play the piano? No. Not about Louis of France? No. Didn't he play the piano? No. So you wonder what people like Ravel, since the French monarchy went basically down the drain from 1793, was it the 21st of January or the 30th, where the execution of Louis XVI, the last monarch of France, if you don't include Louis XVII, who was stored in some room by the followers, allegedly, presumably for his youth and on account of needing his protection. But society doesn't advance, does it, when you put artists like Rolf Harris and people like that into prisons for things that they are alleged to have done, sometimes people from other countries who don't have the same access to the laws, and you ask her, what is the future of the piano? You might as well ask Puccini what was going to be the future of the artist-painter Cavaradossi in Tosca, who was being sought by Scarpia, the chief of police, because there had been a prison escape. And then ask how much that was going to have nothing really, was it, to do with Tosca, except you had this poor girl trying to say how much she was in awe of the fact that and disgust and turmoil over the heart-wrenching fact that her lover Cavaradossi was going to be executed, and then expecting still to give favours in sexual and gratification to Scarpia, the chief of police. You don't have to study the etymologies, do you, of the layman hobbyist, for instance, in is it the humble butterfly, which evolves from the caterpillar, to realise that some people don't have a perception over what is music any more than they have a perception over evolution and the fact that the butterfly comes from the caterpillar. So people say to her, what is the future of the piano? And in a word, I would say, and I know it will hurt some people, but it is a minority, you can be assured majority, the constant performing of Rachmaninoff, Ravel, Debussy, it doesn't matter. You can talk about these people being go-ahead. The truth is, if anyone was to ask the result and the popularity of even those pianists that you were hearing play their own compositions, for instance, I mean, I'm getting too old now, but 30 years ago, I'm told they were playing compositions which were weren't they selling in hundreds of thousands and millions? And now who remembers them? But for some reason, the Rachmaninoffs, the old traditional composers, are still to some the extremity of the popularity of those, for instance, played in piano competitions. You cannot change the errors that simply people do make, whether they are politicians or parliaments, that would suggest that there is any revolution in appointing the reappointment in King Charles II after Oliver Cromwell, and forgiving the royalty all their sins, as it were, and then turfing them out in 1689, getting rid of the House of Stuart, and then bringing in the House of Orange with the Danish army landing in Cornwall near Totnes. It doesn't take a musical expert, a real musician, to realise. In fact, very often it takes a non-musician, doesn't it, to realise that you are not going to achieve a love of music by keep feeding the dinosaur fish and chips, when fundamentally, however much the dinosaur may take it and it stays alive, doesn't mean to say that the dinosaur wouldn't survive longer on greener contemporary things of the soil. So, where is the piano going? You might ask, where has the piano gone? That would be more appropriate. But all the while, you have governments that cannot appoint either monarchy in France or Britain or Germany that intermarries between its countries, and in the case of, for instance, Queen Victoria, who could not manage her own grandson, King Wilhelm II, and prevent 2 world wars, you are not going to achieve the success for the piano, either as an international pianist or a British pianist. And you only have to study the reformation of the Parliament by the 1832 Parliamentary Reform Bill. You only have to look at what the 1833 Bill for the abolition of slavery under the 30 to 34 reign of Earl Grey, second Earl Grey, who, following on from General Wellington, which was Arthur Wellesley, who had allegedly won the Battle of Waterloo, you realise that by the time you get to 2 world wars 100 years later, you really had made no progress, not only in music, where Wagner was undisputably more appreciated by the likes of Hermann Göring, for instance, with his hunting experience and the hunting horns and the French horn history. After all, it was a German that invented the brass valve, wasn't it, by the name of Stotzel. And you talk to her about what is the future of piano. I mean, all the while you don't pay her for her compositions and him for her compositions, you are going to be killing the musical education of our young people. I thank you, everyone.